Just gone after 7, and this is Morning Express. Today is Tuesday, and therefore it's time for us to have a person of interest. Now, Dr. David Molapo is the president of the John C. Maxwell Company Africa, a management consultant, educator, and renowned motivational speaker. Born at the height of apartheid era, he rebirthed the bitterness of the past to dictate his future. You are no longer a prisoner of your past, but a pioneer of your future is a common phrase that he uses. We'll find out why. At the age of 13, David was imprisoned for political activities. Dr. Molapo holds 2 of South Africa's most prestigious awards, the Young Achiever of the Year South Africa and 4 Outstanding South African Awards. He has written a series of books. His values are integrity, honesty, fairness, and he believes that the key to success in life is believe in yourself, grow in confidence, and be tough. We're privileged to have Dr. David Molapo here today as our person of interest. Good morning.
Good morning, Brother Mike, and thanks for this wonderful opportunity.
You're welcome. Let me see if I can practice a little bit of my South African kunjani.
Unjani, Baba.
Okay, that's as far as it goes, so I'll not try. I'll not try and go any further. Good to have you. We'll get to why you're here in Kenya and what you're here to do. But first of all, I was intrigued by the fact that your story reveals to me that you've come a long way. Maybe tell me how you grew up, where you grew up, how it was to be living in a country where there was evident segregation.
Well, like many South Africans, you know, when we grew up under the system of apartheid, you have 2 options. One option is to sit and do nothing. Another option is to feel or do something, you know, that will make a difference. Thank God that at the age of 13, I was one of the leaders of SASO, the South African Student Organization. God gave me the gift of the gap. I could say, let's do things and people will do things.
At the age of 13?
Yes, sir. At the age of 13, I'll just say, we are doing this, and guess what? We shut down schools, age of 13.
So would you call yourself an activist? An
activist, yeah, I like that. Or a freedom fighter, not a terrorist, a freedom fighter, an activist, because, again, we had to do what we had to do. Unfortunately, as you know, the system of apartheid, we were met with gunfire, and all we had were stones. So I went to the other extremes, started smuggling guns into South Africa at the age of 13. From Swaziland, from Botswana, I was one of the leaders. Unfortunately, I was caught. And then I was in prison because of my age. They could not take me to John Foster, then from John Foster to Robben Island. So I was in a prison called Moda B because of my age. But Mike, something happened to me there, my brother. At the age of 13, after being there for 3 months, incarcerated for 3 months, someone left a Gideon Bible. Now, you need to understand, I'm from the BCM movement, the Black Consciousness Movement. No concept of God. In fact, I felt that a white man came with a gun and a Bible. And even today, when you look at the picture of Jesus, it's amazing. It's always this white dude with blue eyes and blonde hair. You know, so I never had a concept of God. But when you are desperate, when you are looking for vision, purpose in life, you know, you begin to introspect. 13 years old, I looked at that Bible and I said, if there is a God, when I open that Bible, please speak to me. Out of all the verses in the Bible, I bumped into Philippians 4, verse 13. The Bible reads, I can. Remember those phrases. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That I can transform my life. 41 years later, this year I'm 54 years old. All our companies begins with the word, I can. I was released from prison, and the political organization that I belonged to, the ANC, probably thought, no, the white man messed my mind, you know. From being a radical, now I'm this religious nut, you know. So they took me to school and obviously allowed me, instead of now going to Cuba to learn to fight with weapons such as AK-47, they said, you know what, maybe we need to get you an opportunity to get an educational AK-47. I went to the United States, got educated there, came back to South Africa, started our businesses, and today, by God's grace, I'm blessed financially and also making a contribution to the broader South African context.
What would you say was that trigger as you were in prison? Because there are many people who've gone through possibly a similar situation where they've been to prison, but they've come out bitter. They've come out worse. They've come out with anger. What is it that possibly you think happened to you that you mentioned as you are opening, on your opening statement, that you can either choose to suffer from, that apartheid situation, or you can make a change?
Well, Mike, life is filled of choices. I mean, people watching this program today, you know, it does not mean because you choose to be positive that you are not going through storms, personal, professional, financial. But I've made a decision to realize that every day I have an opportunity to choose, and I must do it intentionally. So in prison, I made a decision that I'm going to choose to be positive despite the challenges, and I think that's what changed everything. I didn't have money, I didn't have anything. I mean, have you been so poor you could not even pay attention? I was there, you know, but still it is a decision, because your decision will determine your destiny. Life is filled with decisions. You know, I may be HIV positive, example, I heard you talking about this pill, whatever. I can still be HIV positive, but still make a decision that I'm going to be positive. I might be going through a divorce. I might have lost some money. I might be disillusioned in the area of politics in Kenya, in South Africa. But my decision is my decision, and that intentionality is what made a difference in my life. And I live that every day, Mike. In my business life, in my community life, in whatever I do. The decision, choices. Life is filled with choices, not chances. I choose every day to live a positive life.
All right, so you left prison and went to school. What happened?
Went to school through the ANC and through the United Nations. And then when I was there, I realized that here's the problem. Money. Brother Mike, the problem in Africa is we push too much political freedom, and nothing wrong with that. But the economic freedom, nobody teaches us on economic freedom. As you heard, our president just recently with this State of the Nation address, now we're talking about radical economic transformation. But you see, it's too late to talk about it now. As Africans, we need to realize that politically we might be free, but it's all about money. That is why even in the church, I don't like the song that says, I'd rather have Jesus than silver and gold. Here's my song. I'd rather have Jesus plus silver and gold, you know, because we need to deal with this economic freedom. Again, same thing in Africa. South Africa is an example. You can have a GDP growth, but if it does not translate to job creation, opportunities for our young people, then, Mike, we are still, you know, again, you know, peddling things that are not empowering the next generation of leaders. So I made a decision, again, to say why politically I'm free for my lifetime, the remaining life that the Lord Almighty gives me. I'm going to be pushing economic transformation, make money the legal way, the legit way, so that we can give hope to thousands of our young people. And that's really how I ended up in this leadership space.
Okay. The point you're raising about economic freedom,
yes, sir,
is a good point. We are at a position where the link between political empowerment and economic freedom is not very clear in our minds. Do we pursue one in order to get the other? And which one comes first? I remember Kwame Nkrumah saying, seek ye first the kingdom of politics, and everything else will come. Where do we start? Do we start by, or is it even possible to achieve economic empowerment and economic freedom without political freedoms and political empowerment?
Prof, thanks for that. Let me be practical in South Africa.
Yeah.
22 years ago, we got political freedom.
Yes.
But we made a mistake. We get too much into laws. The problem with Africa, we've got so many laws that we don't implement, by the way.
Yeah.
It's so much compliance and compliance issues. I don't have a problem with that. We forget the commitment issue. Example, 22 years ago, when Nelson Mandela spoke about the land.
Yes.
22 years later, we're still talking about the same thing. But for 22 years, we've done absolutely nothing.
Yes.
What am I saying? For the next 5 to 10 years,
yes,
we should have pushed the issues of affirmative action, issues of BEE, not asking our white colonial master, doing it. They were ready. But what did we do? We always want to accommodate and try to be politically correct. When you've got a political mass, all you do is immediately from that political freedom, immediately come up with institutions, strong institutions that will promote economic freedom. Example, in South Africa, I'm a businessman. For you to get a tender, you must go through so many things. You're already coming from a disadvantaged background. You don't have capital. You no longer have all of those things. So political freedom means let's create an environment so that we create these entrepreneurs, not few. Because the problem in South Africa with black economic empowerment, only the cronies of the president or the cronies of the, connected people are benefiting at the expense of the masses. So political freedom is good, but let's use that political freedom to clear up the way so that we can enjoy economic freedom. One, gold, diamonds, natural resources. In South Africa, we still send the stuff overseas for it to be polished. So people like us, we said, no, we'll buy and own, create opportunities here, train our people here, and keep our gold in Africa. Why must we take it out?
If you're a young Kenyan, for example, who wants to make progress, what would you be your advice to, we are a very politically charged society,
Sure.
For better or for worse. You say that there is an interface between politics and economics, and you say once you have political freedom, then pivot towards economic empowerment. So here is a young Kenyan who is looking at the situation as it is and wondering, how do I start? What's the beginning point? Because what I'm seeing happening is that with social media and that kind of engagement on Twitter, most of them, not most of them, but young people still find the need to, double in politics. And let me talk about politicking.
Yes.
As a young person, what would you advise is the entry position? Because here, in terms of political freedoms, we have political freedoms. In terms of abilities to move, we have abilities to move. In terms of an economy that is on the run, it's on the run. I am a young person. What would be your advice in terms of accessing these opportunities?
The very same people who voted for these politicians,
Yes.
we've got to keep our politicians accountable.
Yes.
I think you're seeing that in South Africa. In South Africa, and I'm privileged with humility to say I'm one of those guys who went to the government with the young people. Every deal that is done in government, 10% must be focused on young people. Young people in school, young people out of school. Because not all of us are going to university, not all of us will go to technical. We must also begin to create a mindset that we need to start learning to work for ourselves. This thing of going, have a PhD, passing high school with difficulty and still cannot find a job, absolute rubbish. So again, the influence in the politics. Guys, all the politics, now let's talk about all the deals that are going to be made. 10% must now be focused on young people. Then it behooves the government to now be able to engage these young people who are politicking. Politics is great, but it does not fill your stomach. Every 4 years is another election, another election. It's the same rhetoric, whatever. Young people are getting fed up with that. Young people need opportunities. How do we access those opportunities? Practically. And I believe that if it's a young Kenyan to push whoever they voted for to say, where is the piece of our cake? We don't want a strike. We don't toy. You don't call it toy. We don't want industrial cha-cha-cha. All we're asking is create a pathway for us so that we can be able to engage. Because remember, we are borrowing Kenya and Africa and South Africa from our next generation, And if we do not do something that will create hope and a future for them in the area of economics, and as you can hear, I'm a man of God.
Yes.
And being a man of God, I'm always a generational person because I believe in the legacy piece, not the vacancy piece. So again, young Kenyan looking, come together as Kenyan people, challenge whoever you voted in government to say, where's the piece of cake for the youth thing? Not the youth summit, not have another meeting for another meeting.
Yes.
I am sick and tired of talk shop. We need practical stuff that will say, if this year 1 billion shillings will be to create entrepreneurship, get rid of all this corruption stuff. Let's have established business, hiring some of these unemployed young people, give them a tax break, let us be creative in our stuff and get, Kenya and South Africa and Africa working.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Dr. Molapo, you've mentioned something that maybe would resonate with many Kenyans, and not just Kenyans, but Africa as a
Sure.
whole. You've talked about talking about land during
Yes.
the times of Mandela, and 20 years on, it's still the same story. I think we have a similar story in Kenya and possibly across Africa. And this is where we have a lot of talk, but no action.
Yes.
You're in leadership. You've specialized in leadership. What is our problem in Africa when it comes to leadership? Because it's not an absence of laws. It's not an absence of structures. It's not an absence of programs, because we have all those. But when it comes to execution, we have a problem. I'll quote maybe, for instance, in Kenya, we have an issue with corruption. When I look at South Africa, I see the same thing. Jacob Zuma has many. I mean, there's the house that he built and, there was all that. So we have similar problems, but we seem not to have the ability to execute. Where is our problem from a leadership guru's perspective?
Number one, maladministration. Two, lack of vision from leaders, selfish and unpatriotic leaders. And here's the fourth one, which is a heavy one, the arrogance of success. As I said 2 weeks ago, I spoke at an ANC conference on the arrogance of success. Because sometimes you think when we're in leadership, we own and control everything. Mike, you cannot hoodwink people.
No.
Well, and sooner or later, people give an opportunity, but sooner or later, particularly the younger people, they come to a point where they get fed up. And the problem is now we don't want this energy to be now directed in the wrong way. So what is happening in South Africa now? For the first time in South Africa, the state institutions, the civil society institutions are keeping from the president. Our social security system is in a mess today. The minister is being grilled. South African Broadcasting Corporation, PRASA. For the first time live on television, the politicians are being asked some serious questions. And again, it's one way of people saying, we are fed up with this thing, we need to keep you accountable. There's no accountability with leadership. And when the people now, not fighting Mike, keep you, Mike, you are part of this. Where's the money? Explain where the money is going to. This was agreed that this particular percentage is going to young people. 22 years later, in South Africa, 8% of our budget, 8%, was supposed to buy land, you know, a willing seller, willing buyer, 8%. In 22 years, if we were doing that, we'd own half of the land in South Africa. Guess how much we own now? Less than 0.1%. So now we need to keep people accountable because we cannot allow leaders to get away with this.
So if South Africa is at that point where you're holding leaders accountable, in Kenya we say punda amechoka. What that means literally is that the donkey has become tired. It cannot work like this anymore. What is it that brought South Africa to that point? Because maybe in Kenya, there's a question that we have asked here with Prof, when will we get tired? To a point where you say enough is enough.
Well, the Malimas of this world will come up. And unfortunately for South Africa, more than 60% of the population of South Africa is under the age of 21. You have seen this, the fees must fall. So the bottom line is you're realizing the next generation, the men power or women power is made up of young people. And if they're not happy with this, they can shut the country down. They've done it twice in South Africa. So it cannot be business as usual now. The good news, we still have the strong institutions, the constitution in South Africa, that now is beginning to create problems for the ruling party, who some of them are corrupt. The first time, the Minister of Finance now, for the first time, is becoming more powerful than the president. That's an encouraging sign. So when you come to that point, at least I can say as a South African, I'm optimistic because now even foreign investors are saying now, if these guys are getting their act together, empowering the next generation of leaders who must be skilled so that we can make a better South Africa. That's the kind of leadership that we are looking for. The good part now is, obviously, our President Jacob Zuma in June, we have a policy conference, and as you know, in December, his term is finished. So now we are seeing a lot of emerging good leaders, maybe like Nkosazana Zuma, Cyril Ramaphosa, and other people who are astute leaders that we believe now understand the needs of South Africans so that we can now go to the next dimension, not to the next level, to the next dimension.
When you talk about accountability, our situation here, and we've had this discussion over the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
We've just finished a voter registration exercise in this country. And one of the big challenges that was recorded is that there is voter apathy, that people are looking at the political class and thinking that there is no need of getting involved in this process because these people are too tribal, they are too mediocre, they are too corrupt, and there is nothing I can do. I hear you bringing in a different message, saying that the more these things become manifest, the more the average citizen is supposed to get involved and hold the political class accountable. Can you kindly speak to that from the background of voter apathy?
An example in South Africa,
yes.
Arrogance of success.
Yes.
ANC, we own the people, we are a Mandela party.
Yes.
So our local elections, Prof, gave us a shock.
Yes, it did.
Okay?
Yes, it did.
The Nelson Mandela municipality, yes. Nelson Mandela,
yes.
is now run by opposition.
Yes.
What a disaster. The Nelson Mandela municipality is now headed by opposition. Johannesburg and Pretoria, these are our pearls, are now run by opposition. What's the message? The apathy, guys, the young people, they realize the power of the ballot. If you cannot listen to me, I will use the power of the vote. I will register and vote and then send a message. And I hope Kenyans are watching what's happening in South Africa. 2019 It's our national elections. It's not looking good for my party, the ANC. The trajectory is not looking good. And the number one thing, Mike, it comes back to is, my brother, leadership or lack of leadership. Comes back to it. If we do not have leadership that is decisive, leadership that is listening to the people's needs, we are headed the wrong way. So the next 20 years, the ANC that you know as the ANC, if we move on like this, there will be no ANC in South Africa.
And
because right now it's 54%.
Now that you're part of ANC and you can already see the direction it is taking, what are you expected to do as an individual to circumvent that? And I ask that because if we now contextualize it to our local setting, the voter apathy that he's talking about is probably as a result of these guys are in utopia. They're in a world of their own. They don't answer my needs, meaning we're totally disconnected from the leadership that you're talking about. What is my responsibility as a citizen to ensure that I bring back that connection?
Well, vote for someone else. I mean, I'm an ANC and I'll tell the people, if people don't like what I do, vote for someone else. But now, as a business leader now, Mike, I'm also saying to myself, the way things are going, I've got to now think outside the box to say, maybe, and that's what we are doing as I can, focusing now, forget politics now, focusing on identifying these sharp young leaders so that in the future they end up in politics, at least they have got both the political side and the economic side. Because the problem sometimes with the politicians, either some of them in that utopian society, they already have the money. They really don't know what's happening down there. Some of them, they get into politics to make money. So already, you know, either side, some of them are not meeting the needs of leadership, and leadership is the ability, that's my definition, the ability to identify those people with potential, empower, enable them so that they can have a better life. In fact, have a better life than you. So that's what now people like us and our organization is doing. The good news is because of that approach, Brother Mike, we now, even though the opposition know that I'm ANC, guess what? They are using our leadership skills because leadership is leadership. You know, it's like eating chicken.
So are you saying, from what you're saying, that with ICANN, you're able to identify this sharp mind? So is it a lack of sharp minds that has brought us to where we are in terms of our political leaders?
Correct. Because remember, when you look for sharp minds, it means you must leave from your ivory tower and get closer to the people. You cannot heal the wounds you do not feel, Mike. The problem with the politicians, Prof says, we're disconnected. We don't heal. I mean, this morning you just said, you know, food prices are going up, commodity prices are going up. But if every day I've got my 3 meals, you know, my caviar, whatever, I don't have a clue what's cooking there.
But the tragedy, Dr. Molapo, is the fact that once you've identified that intelligent mind, put them into politics, I don't know what happens once they get there. They seem to lose the plot. You get the money, then you get to that class where now you're disconnected from the wounds, what you're calling the wounds of the people.
But that is why people like us in leadership, we need to start there. John Maxwell, my mentor, says everything rises and falls on leadership. So we must not also give up on leadership. We must also be able to challenge leadership if they are willing to change. Because remember, you cannot change a person who is not willing to admit that they have a problem. And that's the problem with African leaders. Unfortunately, they still do not think they've got a problem. They think the people have a problem. So is that whole thing of humility, one of the qualities of an authentic, effective leader is the humility to listen to the voice of the people. I don't have to agree with you, but I must be able to listen to the voice of the people. So with ICANN, that's where we're starting. We're starting right there at the top because we believe if the changes can come up here, Prof, so that even some of these policies, I like it when people say policies, if they are man-made policies, you can change these policies overnight. If these policies are the ones, we call it the red tape. Who brought this red tape? Why can't it be a white tape or a black tape or a blue tape or whatever? You know, or why don't you cut the tape, you know? So bureaucracy, if it is man-made, it means that bureaucracy can be man-shaken so that we can get the things done, you know. Why must we always in Africa wait for a crisis, wait for an emergency? Remember, if we do not learn to get there, people will throw us there, Mike. If we do not learn to get there. So we've got an option. We can be proactive or reactive or inactive or radioactive. And I choose to be proactive.
Let me ask about the role of business in producing leaders. It's something that you've brought into this discussion, and I think it's worth talking about. Do you think that business is doing enough to fill in that gap? Because Michael has said that once these people get into politics, then they get into that culture of corruption and impunity, and they no longer serve the people. We need to fill in this gap. We need to bring in new, and remember, there is no motivation on the part of politicians to replace themselves.
Yes.
They would want to stay there as long as they can. Do you see a role that then business and business leaders can play in producing new leadership or new vision to replace these old politicians?
So it is not only a need, it is an imperative.
Okay.
It's an imperative.
Yes.
And that is why I mentioned the word the state institutions
Yes.
that civil society is running. Because business is also naughty.
Yes.
They thrive when there is chaos.
Yes, they do.
They don't pay their taxes
Yes,
when
yes,
there is chaos.
yes.
They always call it tax avoidance or, so I'm also hard on the business people because they're also opportunistic. Instead of them being proactive, they kind of like back off and just let everything crumble while they're making millions, particularly in the continent. I am one of those people who are hard on businesses, that we as business people need even to be more involved in developing the next leaders. Remember, we've got a plus in that not only do we develop the next leadership, the existing leadership, equipping our people, we already have the means to be able to give them the practical job so that in the future they end up in government, at least they are understanding issues of corporate governance, all of those ethical things that we want government to do. So it is imperative for business people to be involved.
Do you think, listening to you, and especially in the African situation where business thrives in chaos. I remember reading a story of a South American billionaire who had made his fortune out of the chaos in those South American countries. And then he went to America to invest there and try and make it in business. And even with his billions, he couldn't make it in America because now this was a regulated market. Yes, there were systems, He couldn't make it there. And my question then is, then what motivation do businesses have to create a controlled and regulated environment if they're making profit out of chaos?
Well, the problem with chaos, it has got an expiry date.
Yes.
You can't do that. And
Yes.
again, in one of my books, my opening statement is things don't end wrong.
Yes.
They start wrong.
Yes.
So if as a business you already are unethical in your starting, trust me, you'll not be sustainable. So the bottom line is most business people, do that. Example, in South Africa now, the trading, forex trading, these are reputable banks that in their own countries, they would not have done that. So we just nailed them, and now they're going to be paying billions because they knew that this thing was not right. They pursued it. Now, unfortunately, they have to pay. And now reputational risk for them is not good at the end of the day. So again, I encourage business people. It's a wonderful opportunity in the middle of this chaos. Let us begin to be proactive and create opportunities because these two shall come to pass. Politics come and they go.
They go. So you're warning to business people, and why I'm saying this is because we are in a situation where, because of dirty money that is coming from these tenders and whatever, then we have businessmen, and I wouldn't call them businessmen, I don't know what I would call them, springing up, and in 2-3 days, in 1 year, somebody claims that they are huge businessmen from this money that is flowing left, right, and center. Are you saying that there is nothing to be gained in the short term by these kinds of businesses, and therefore our young people should rethink the business models that they are seeing happening, that somebody gets into government? Yesterday we were talking about an MCA. An MCA is like a regional, like in your place, like be a municipal councillor or something like that, who less than 4 years ago was a regular guy traveling in a motorbike, and now 4 years later, the people in the village can see that he is doing pretty well. And that kind of short-termness is not necessarily good for business, and it is not necessarily good for the country, but it is what our young people are seeing and what they're trying to emulate.
But when the consequences come, just like our President Zuma with all these other, financiers who became rich in 24 months, unfortunately, where are they? They are gone. He's stuck. Reputational problem, and young people realize that cannot be sustained. So short term, it might give them that nice, zeal or zest, but at the end of the day, as business leaders, we always talk about long-term investment. And it behooves us, that is why as part of the ICANN Foundation, more than 5,000 schools, we are in the schools so that we can teach some of those principles while these young people are there. Gangsterism, mafia, drugs, and all those things, those things are not sustainable. You end up dead, it's just not sustainable. So we then need to give them another message, a positive message, which is long-term. I'm one of those living examples. I had many opportunities to be corrupt. But again, being a man of God, doing business ethical way, it pays off. I sleep. I sleep well.
Well,
Okay,
talk to our young people. Amidst all these challenges and amidst all the problems that they are seeing, is there room for optimism?
Yes, unfortunately, for some of the negative people, I'm one of those naive optimist persons.
Good.
Yeah. Again, from my life,
Yes.
Coming from a poor family, when I was born in a garage, but I always tell young people, being born in a garage does not make you a car, So again, back to that thing of a choice. Have a positive outlook on life.
Yes.
Because with that positivity, willingness to learn, willingness to do what is right, again, that is why I believe in the supernatural intervention of God, where you will meet people, coaches and mentors, you learn from them, even if you're highly educated, learn from people who have done a lot of stuff, and then be able then to grow into other areas. In my area, in the area of business, and then realizing that you are blessed to be a blessing, so that when you do become a millionaire, a billionaire, you realize that you are what you are because of the grace of God. That money must now be given back to the community so that you duplicate a lot of David Molapos. Isn't that what legacy is all about?
It is. Yeah. All right. You alluded to some of the things that you believe make a good leader. And we've constantly said, and I think we all agree here, that one of the biggest problems we have is in leadership.
Yes.
So from your opinion and from an ICANN perspective, how do we create good leaders? I'm sure the people that we have in our countries and in Africa are educated. It's not a lack of education.
Sure.
It's not a lack of knowledge. We know corruption is not the right thing to do. But what is it that translates to becoming a good and effective leader?
Mike, thank you so much for that question, because the problem in Africa, we have good managers. And the problem with managers are good with paperwork. The paradigm shift now is we now need to get into people work. Because it does not mean because you're educated that you may be a great leader. I know a lot of leaders who didn't even go to school. So what are some of these qualities we are looking for? Number one is the whole thing of vision. We need visionaries. I believe that a good leader, first of all, is a man or woman with a vision. But number two, be passionate about that vision. To do what? To be involved in people work. And the whole thing of curiosity, thinking outside the box, because we need leaders who are, in difficult times. There's a book I've written on how to lead effectively in difficult times, where we realize that even in leadership, leaders do not shrink from challenges. We need people who will be able to stretch. So identifying those people with those qualities, practically. If we go to an organization, a government, the first thing we do is we do an assessment too. Because, Brother Mike, we need to know, where are you? The problem in Africa, we have put the right people in the wrong bus or the right people in the wrong seat. So we need, again, to come back on this whole performance thing. What really are your strengths? What are some of the improvement opportunities? I didn't say weaknesses. I don't like the word weaknesses. All of us have strength. All of us have got gaps where we can improve. So in our practical situation in government, in the corporate world, in the educational system, we always do assessment. Where are you now? What is your current reality? First of all, do you want to become a leader? Because the problem sometimes we force people into leadership who do not want to become leaders. So if there's a yes, that's a good start. And then from there, what skills do you need and what gaps must you have so that we can begin to upscale you, then upgrade you with some form of leadership skill set so that you can become the man or woman that you're supposed to be.
All right.
And it's a process. It doesn't happen just like that.
Okay. Let's take a call from Peter in Embakasi. Good morning, Peter, and thank you for calling. To your comment or question.
I have a question to this our guest today.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I agree have knowing South Africa is one of the best countries in Africa. And recently we've seen people fighting something called Xenophobia. What is our guest today can talk to us today? Because if South Africa is doing that, now this can come to Kenya.
Okay, I'm not quite sure I got your question, Peter. What's your question?
I'm asking, my question is, South Africa, we have seen South Africa having a problem with the people who are not
with xenophobia? Okay. Maybe we'll just tackle xenophobia there. Maybe we're having a communication problems. We also have another Peter, also calling from Nairobi. Peter, thank you for calling. Your question. Sorry, James. James in Nairobi. Your question, please. James.
Hi.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Yes, to your question or your comment, sir.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, we can hear you, James. Straight to your question or comment.
Good morning, Mike.
Yes, go right ahead.
How are you? I wish to commend our guest today, and one thing I would.
I'm sorry, with the quality of the call is not very good, so we'll have to disconnect it and possibly just call again. Maybe it is a network issue, but of course, Peter brings in an interesting angle of xenophobia. And maybe to expand that conversation, xenophobia is probably, it's not unique to South Africa,
Sure.
but even if we contextualize it and bring it to a local scene, maybe we'd look at it as tribalism, where we segregate or include or exclude because of tribe or because of nation.
Well, that is true. Again, in South Africa, 60% of my associates or employees are from African countries. So, you know, I'm one of those people who obviously is against xenophobia. And again, remember, it's pockets. South Africa is not all xenophobic, you know. But again, it comes back to what Prof is saying, that if people are deprived or perceived as being deprived opportunities, you come from other parts of the continent, you make money for yourself. Instead of dealing with the government, the easy targets are what? Are the people who are making money where you didn't think there would be money made, you know. But again, that spirit of xenophobia, the good part is being tackled in South Africa. And I think you saw even this year when it was just about to start, we're able to nip it in the bud because of business people now saying, whoa, 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 whoa. People like us, I mean, we've got in our company 30-something countries are represented in ICANN, you know, Maxwell in South Africa. So we have to stand up. It cannot just be a government thing. It must be everybody's involvement.
Where do we go wrong when it comes to leadership? Because that's where we were. And I'd like to understand, is it in our education system? Is it our moral or our value system? Is it how we are brought? What is it that makes specifically Africa have a challenge of leadership?
Well, it's because we have allowed people from outside of Africa to dictate to us what leadership is all about. We need to have our own definition. Remember the last time I came up here, I told you that this wonderful idiom that unless the lions begin to tell their stories, the hunters will always give us their own version. So it's about time that Africans come up with their own African definition of leadership, practically. John Maxwell is my mentor, but he has a wonderful leadership concept from the Western culture. So when we bought the rights, we contextualized it, took some of the elements, but again, made sure that we Africanize leadership. So the second thing is our educational system. Mike, you will know, my brother, that this year we started something called the 21st Century Teaching and Learning. We need to go back on even how we educate our children. I mean, our children, as Prof is saying, they're all social media people. They're rote learning, you know. I'm now a teacher. I will tell you stuff, you listen and then pass the exam. Those days are gone. Educators now are supposed to be facilitators. So it's a whole system that we need to revamp so that we now begin to develop a new kind of leaders. That is why I am excited coming to Kenya, because some of the people who are going to meet are the education people. Yeah. Folks, the way we are doing education is right.
It's got to change. I can see Prof smiling because he's an educationist, and I'll come to you, Prof. Let me pick a call from James first, and I come to Prof. James, good morning, and thank you for calling again.
Good morning.
Yes, go right ahead. Very well.
My name is Nairobi. I would like to commend our guest today.
Sorry?
I would like to commend our guest today in the studio. I would like to ask our guest if I think he can speak to our members of parliament. There's one thing that is constantly playing in my head, rather. If at all such a thing can speak to our members of parliament, there is something controversial about the term of our members of parliament and who demand that they be paid for the period they have not worked until the end of the 5 years. If I would ask our speaker.
All right, we do apologize. I think the quality of the call again is a bit compromised, so we're not able to hear what the question is. But Prof, I could see you glowing in terms of education.
When Dr. brings in the issue of education, it gets me excited. What I would want to do to put this into context, are you people in South Africa having this conversation about educational reform, and what shape is it taking?
Thank you so much. 2 weeks ago, you'll see with ICANN when you Google.
Yes.
We're now focusing on STEAM. You know, it used to be STEM. You know, science, technology, you know, engineering, but we put the A there, arts, you know, and all of that. So what's happening now is, for the first time in South Africa, again, civil society, business people. I used to be a director of Dimension Data, okay? One of the largest information technology company in the world. The system, the educational system, is not giving us what we want. So I'd rather get a young man or a young woman after matric, put them through a fast course of technology. In 3 years, they will deliver more, they'll get more money, but they'll deliver more of the latest technology than a person who has a BSc in computer. After 4 years, they come in, I still have to retrain them. So now we are pushing to say the output is not what we're getting. So for the first time now, business is saying, this is what we need. These are the careers of the future. So if then these careers of the future, the next 5, 10, 15 years, let's be sure that as we get them into the system, let's now begin to change the way we do education. I must commend even our president, Jacob Zuma, is the one who actually gave us the go-ahead to say, folks, let's start with grade 1 and grade 7 and begin to pilot. So as we speak now in South Africa, we are piloting this. Next year in March, we're going to be inviting your minister from Kenya here. We are launching in 17 countries, all of them coming to South Africa on the 21st century teaching and education.
Teaching and education.
Yes.
What I'm hearing from you is that coming from business, you see a huge, huge role for yourself in terms of leadership, in terms of politics, and now in terms of education.
Correct.
Can you encourage our business people? Because, and Michael, if I'm wrong, you correct me, our business people here are business people. You don't hear huge voice of business people in politics. You don't hear a huge voice of business people in education, probably when they are complaining that these graduates are half-baked. But here you are saying that the people who are supposed to lead in these reforms, or the people who are supposed to get involved in these reforms, are actually business people, not to sit back and wait for the politicians and the education people to do these things. They just consider themselves money people and they leave the rest to other people.
Well, Prof, that is why we're here in Kenya, and we pray that we will be able to use a case study from South Africa. Obviously, we're not coming to impose. We're here to propose, so that, you know, we can also, you know, take some of these business guys so that they can see what we are doing. If you want a better Kenya, if you want a fruitful Kenya, we've discovered that you've got to be involved. You can't just be sitting and do nothing. Corporate social investment is not enough, Mike. You know, this thing of just we'll have 2% of whatever. No. When I talk about involvement, I'm talking about from preschool, early childhood development. And again, the ICANN model that we've already been doing for the last 10 years, Prof. So we don't only preach this. We are doing it from early childhood. You know, my wife runs that. Because being a woman, she realizes that, you know, that's where you start. If these young people are empowered in the era of technology, while they're still young people, technology, politics, economics, as young people, then we've got a better shot that when they come out of the system of matric, then we've got a better future for all of us.
They are better skilled to deal with the challenges of the working world.
Correct.
There's something I don't want to forget. It came through my mind when you were talking about nurturing a younger generation. In today's paper, and that's why I pulled this paper, in today's paper, there is a column here by a columnist, an opinion called, "Do you have a sponsor?" No, not that kind. Of course, we have a pejorative way of looking at the sponsor, but this is a guy who is trying to advise young people about having mentorship, okay? Having mentorship. I have come to appreciate that to a very, very large extent, you may give young people skills, you may give young people opportunities, you may give young people technology, and sometimes the difference between whether they succeed or not comes down to mentorship. That if these people have all these skills and they have the resources, but they don't have mentorship they won't make it. Is this an important part of your program, and how do you go about it?
Well, let me then use this. If you go to Maxwell Leadership Kenya, you just go to our website. Guess what? We push on that mentorship thing. Again, Maxwell Leadership Kenya. That to us is a make or break deal, is that mentorship part.
Yes.
I can spend money, empower young people, put a lot of things, but until I now walk with them so that they can be exposed to how we do business in the boardroom and everything, that's the key. And hence, I'm again tough on the business people. It's time for us to get involved in and stop complaining. We are always complaining.
Yeah. If I'm a young person,
yes,
out of campus, just gotten into a job or looking for a job or whatever, how do I identify a mentor? What do I do, and what do I look for?
Prof, that's why I'm going to send you back to that thing, because we've got a whole thing, because you need to prepare mentors, prepare mentees, and then there's something called matching them. Because the problem is you can't just get, Prof, go to Mike, whatever. There's a whole process, and that is my IP, because in my business, for every voice, there's an invoice. So when you go into that, we outline on exactly what we cover for the mentors, mentees, also from government and also in the corporate, and also people like you, where an individual can say, Dave, I want to be a role model. What is needed so that I can match with you? But again, Maxwell Leadership Kenya. If you go to our website, I think you will like what you see.
Do you think the breed of leaders that we have right now possibly lacked a mentor, which is why we have a gap? Because like I said earlier, it is not a lack of education.
Sure.
It is not a lack of intelligence. I'm sure if we did an IQ test, most of them would probably do quite well.
Yes.
But when it comes to values, when it comes to integrity, when it comes to those softer issues, there just seems to be a gap. Could it be that they did not have mentors? Or could it be that their mentors, they actually had mentors, but could it be that their mentors mentored them in that kind of way?
Well, two answers. Number one is our research has found out that a lot of people, including in the government, never had mentors. There's no point of reference. Example, like in South Africa, when we came in 22 years ago, our leader was a former prisoner, Nelson Mandela. No mentor, we didn't have a clue on how to run government, whatever. So lack of mentorship. But also the other side is people who had willing heart, were willing to mentor, but they were not equipped on what mentoring is all about. From an African perspective, you mentioned something important. We call them soft skills. Mike, these are hard skills. Because technically people are great, but if you don't have the people skills, or what you call soft skills, your business, your government will not succeed. We need to understand, let's stop using the word soft skills. I like the word life and leadership skills. Because things like values and, integrity and all of those things, those things
Allow
cannot
me
be
to stop
taught.
you there, because we have a situation in Kenya right now, and I want to understand fully when you're talking about soft skills and leadership skills. We have a president who, for the last few times, he has uttered words that possibly you would excuse him if he was, with his cronies, but you'd not expect that on a public platform. Is that a skill that one can learn when it comes to leadership?
Yes, you can learn, because as part of what Maxwell does, we sit with these politicians. There are certain things, you mentioned PR or theatrics, there are certain things you say and you do not say. It's just decorum. But unless these guys are empowered, Brother Mike, they say something, I'm sorry to use this word, something stupid, like a Donald Trump thing where today now it's a deadline, did Obama wiretap me or not? You've got to be careful, because if you want to change the direction of a country, you must change the declaration of your lips. What comes out of the politician's mind is powerful stuff. So again, they need to be mentored, coached. There are certain things that you can say, but at the same time, where it gives you respect, whatever, particularly when you're under stress. I know your president is under stress now, under, when you feel fatigue. But it's not only with president. Same thing as a husband, as a wife, as a teacher. There are a couple of things that we need to be empowered and trained on, and those things are what we call soft skills or life and leadership skills.
Okay, I want to bring in Michelle now, and maybe I'm sure we have some responses coming in. Michelle?
Absolutely, lots of responses coming in, but many of them are questions, and we're out of time here. We have the likes of Arap Rauji saying, can the doctor please tell us how we can divorce tribalism from our politics here in Kenya? And he has a big point, because we have so much effort that still needs to be made in terms of creating a unified identity, not just thinking along tribal or racial lines when it comes to South Africa. Just very briefly, closing comments, how can we achieve that?
Well, it's a process. Again, unfortunately, the professor was right. There is a third force that wants us to continue with that. Racialism, whatever. South Africa is supposed to be a non-racial thing, but we still have the black and white issue. Example, in my organization, 30% are white people, you know, but we still have those issues there. So it's some of these things are entrenched. It's a process, but again, we can empower and educate people so that we begin to look at the bigger picture. I need you, you need me. Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. I am because you are because I am, and together.
Final question. If somebody wanted to get onto your website, how do we find you?
I can Maxwell Leadership Kenya. It's in there, my friend. Just go check it out.
Thank you very much. Dr. David Molapo, it's been a pleasure having you as our person of interest.